people who have claimed asylum, people who are here legally. He is stripping away, yes, he is, their citizenship and their status. He's stripping away their status through humanitarian parole and TPS and trying to deport those people too. And so it's one thing to message the American people, okay, we're going to deport violent criminals, and that's all that we're going to do. And I think the vast majority of Americans would be on your side. Nobody wants violent criminals. I don't think we want violent criminals here in the United States.
I don't know.
We don't. I'm telling you right now, Scott.
You let a bunch in.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to yesterday's news channel where we watch CNN so you don't have to. Scott Jennings showed up on Wednesday night's episode of NewsNight with Abby Phillip. Once again, he stayed calm, brought the facts, and made the entire panel look unserious. They were debating Trump's big, beautiful bill live while the House floor vote was unfolding, and whether it was dodging traps or correcting flat-out lies, Scott Jennings proved exactly why the left fears honest debate. Anyway, let's watch Scott Jennings destroy a panel of liberals trying to convince America that Trump's tax bill is somehow bad for working people. Let's go.
Right? Audits for the rich are getting cut, but 87% of audits are still for people under $200,000. People see this as the crock that it is and is a reminder for people that the system is rigged against them.
Is this a warning sign?
Well, first of all, they're going to leave this vote open all night if necessary. They've got 4 no's right now. A bunch of the Republicans haven't voted yet, so they will leave this open and open and open until they get there, I think, is what I'm hearing from the House floor. That's number one. Number two, to put your name up in lights at this point as a Republican, to say I'm the person who's stopping the president's agenda, that's a thing. And so, this is where he has had success in the past and where Speaker Johnson has had success in the past. When the president engages and he puts his shoulder to the wheel, they have had success in getting close votes over the line. They're not going to amend the bill. This is what it is. They voted, the Senate voted, it's back. And the whole project here tonight is to pass this thing as is by the president's intended deadline of July the 4th.
Regardless of what's in it? I mean, I think that's really the, I think you're right.
It's 90% of, the House bill, what they will tell you is about 90% of what they sent over came back to them. So it's not a wholesale change,
right,
but there were some changes.
My point is that as a country, we've been in this place where there's been a lot of growth. If you take out the pandemic, right, there's been a huge amount of growth. There has been nothing done about spending. This bill does nothing about reducing about the fiscal picture. It does nothing about that. And so now Republicans are saying, well, let's just, growth is sort of like the magic wand. Growth is just going to fix all the problems. And there are many conservatives who are skeptical of that argument because it just seems like a great way to brush away any concerns that there might be about what's really in here.
Well, it's not a spending bill. It's a reconciliation bill, and it's largely just about taxes. They're keeping the tax rates and keeping them from going back to the pre-2017 levels. They're also adding more tax cuts for working class Americans. They're also investing in the southern border. They are doing some welfare reform. But at its core, this is about taxes. And as Shermichael pointed out, if we allow the tax rates to expire and we have the largest tax increase in American history, we will not have any economic growth, I can assure you. That would be bad for economic growth. So the president's view is, I'm doing what I can do on tariffs and at the executive branch. You guys keep the tax rates low, and you add tax cuts and tax breaks for, no taxes on tips and the other things for working class Americans and for senior citizens on Social Security. That will fuel the kind of growth that, if coupled with restrained spending in the future, would allow more deficit reduction.
Which you build into your assessment about dynamic scoring versus static scoring, which was the premise of my point.
Sometime in the future.
This bill is a deal with the devil. It explodes our national debt. It militarizes our entire economy, and it strips away healthcare and basic dignity of the American people for what? To give Elon Musk a tax break and billionaires the greedy taking of our nation. We cannot stand for it, and we will not support it. You should be ashamed.
Democrats, as Hakeem Jeffries said, are united. We don't have to guess about that. They are, in fact, united because I think they see the politics of this crystal clear, as we've been discussing.
Yeah, they've got to get all 10. So there's 10 Republicans that haven't voted, just looking at it here, and they've got to flip one of those 4 in order to pass the rule. Another thing I think that's going on behind the scenes, in addition to the taxation and Medicaid conversations, is the immigration conversation. My guess is one of the persuasion tactics being used on the outstanding Republicans here is The White House believes that this legislation and the investments in border security, the investments in ICE, the investments in the overall situation that Trump ran on, which is deportations and securing the southern border. I mean, that was a big part of how Republicans won the last election. So apart from the economics and apart from the healthcare conversation, there is an immigration conversation and a border security conversation going on in the background that I suspect is heavily persuasive to some people.
But meaning that they're just being urged to think about what's already in the bill as being important to them, because the bill is loaded up.
Well, the conversation would go something like this: voting against this means voting against the president's agenda when it comes to border security and deportations. Do you want to go home and tell your Republicans and the people who elected you and the president that you stopped him from doing what he said he would do? It's a hard thing.
It's so interesting because that's working both ways in this conversation.
Sorry, I had to troll my audience by leaving that clip of AOC in there to remind you how embarrassingly dumb she is. And to scare you, because people actually vote for this person. And you may be thinking, come on, Matthew, you're better than that. We're better than that. Well, why do you need to call her dumb? Well, let's just break down the short clip that we just saw. She gave a speech on the House floor claiming Trump's big, beautiful bill is a scheme to make Elon Musk richer. Billy, if that's not a dumb comment, I'm not sure what is. Trump and Musk aren't exactly on speaking terms right now. But what's more frustrating than anything is how AOC delivers her nonsense with full confidence. So apparently not a single staffer thought to update her DNC talking points that are given to her daily. And they hadn't updated them for a while. I mean, that talking point's like 2 months old. I don't even think that's something MSNBC uses anymore. And I've referenced in past videos, I don't have problems with Republicans that dissent for honorable reasons. Voicing your opinion and bringing awareness to a real problem is one thing. But here's the question that always comes to mind and I never get an answer to. For the Republican members that are actively trying to block Trump's big, beautiful bill, let's say you're successful. What now? Well, I can partially answer that. I mean, we already know what happens. Americans get hit with a $3.5 trillion tax hike over the next decade. I think Scott touched on it, but this thing isn't just about taxes. Trump's entire plan, trade, tariffs, reshoring, growth, depends on this foundation, this bill. Growth comes when people get to keep more of what they earn. That's why this bill matters. In killing it, what is the backup plan? That's the question I have for those Republicans that want to block it. At that point, I feel like you're not being principled anymore. That's just stupidity. Back to it.
Stand by for us. This is a live situation happening on Capitol Hill right now. I want to just bring it in to Scott Jennings, who I know you're in close touch with some Republicans on the Hill. What's going through their minds right now?
So a few updates. Hearing from the White House that the president is fully engaged right now and on the phones. He's been on the phones since 7 o'clock this morning and in meetings. Also, the White House political team is up on the Hill right now working with the members who haven't voted yet or who may need to change their vote. One other sort of thing that's floating around right now and that they want to remind Republicans of is that, it was reported today that the president has a $1.4 billion war chest at his disposal for the upcoming midterms.
That sounds like a threat.
And he plans to be fully engaged in the midterms, and I think he plans to be fully engaged for people who support his agenda. So that's on the executive branch side.
Yeah.
Let me just give you a little bit of color from the Hill. So one member of Congress says, "It's not over till it's over. I've seen this movie before." Another tells me, "I think we'll get there, maybe a few more hours." So I think there's some cautious optimism in some of the people I'm hearing from. And make no mistake, behind all that is the president and his team right now reminding people exactly who the leader of the party is and that this is his agenda.
Yeah, that will work for the people for whom Trump is a big factor in their district. But as Lauren was pointing out, someone like David Valadao, Fitzpatrick, those are folks who...
That's two. You can lose.
They've got...
You care a lot about the national park system. He's proposing a $1.2 billion cut to national park system. That's the most in the 109-year history of national parks. More specifically, 20 people are being laid off on the Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky. 30% of Kentuckians are on Medicaid. 200,000 are going to be losing their Medicaid. 35 hospitals in Kentucky receive disproportionate Medicaid funding, and so they're going to be at risk. And 10% increase in utility bills Kentuckians are going to see. I think when you hear that, I think you're going to care a lot more than just hearing hyperbolic statements from Democrats.
Well, in the Senate, they added a rural hospital fund, $50 billion. And so the states like Kentucky that have a lot of rural hospitals, and we do, are going to be able to access that money to help offset what might happen. I don't accept the projections on this, number one. Number two, it is not unpopular. It is not unpopular to invest in ICE. It is not unpopular to give this agency what it needs to deport violent criminals. It is not unpopular to make sure illegal aliens are not getting welfare. It is not unpopular to take able-bodied Americans who are not doing anything, who are choosing not to work. It's not unpopular to say, we're not paying for your welfare when we're asking everybody else to get up and go to work. These are popular provisions, as is no tax on tips, as is keeping the tax rates low. You keep talking about the popularity of the bill. Individual provisions are exactly how Trump won the national popular vote. It will work if they run the play.
But it's current.
You know, I don't have much of an ego, but just based on the content I put out, I'm starting to determine I'm pretty good at this. I mean, I give you the cringiest AOC speech ever. And I think most people would reasonably say, hey, that was a good video. I got to see some liberal nonsense. That's why it pays off to stay around for the whole video. Because just when you think the nonsense ends, oh, no. We've still got Dan Coe. You know how I always say Democrats love talking edge cases and turning them into the rule? What he just did is exactly that. Dan Coe tried to hit Scott Jennings with a gotcha, a funding cut supposedly affecting Scott's home state, and I don't know, make him say, oh, I'm totally against the bill now. But even that example sucked, and you know Dan Coe put some good research into that to really stick it to Scott. I think we learned a lesson. Don't challenge Scott on what's going on in Kentucky, considering he wants to be a senator there very soon. Because Scott came back with a calm, direct answer that Dan clearly didn't expect, and explains how the bill actually includes a $50 billion rural hospital fund that protects states like Kentucky. So not only is the broader narrative false, even Dan's personal example falls apart. So Dan, I never give advice to Democrats, but it's getting really hard to watch. So until you start bringing facts instead of emotion, you're not going to experience success on this show. So this was different than most episodes, right? The Democrats melted down, pushed fake panic. Scott Jennings dismantled every false talking point with receipts and restraint. AOC can rant about billionaires all she wants. The facts are clear. This bill protects working Americans, rewards growth, and lays the groundwork for Trump's economic vision. Now, I'm going to say something profound here because I don't think I've ever said it on this show. The left can't argue with that, so they invent distractions. Just kidding, I say that all the time. So what do you guys think? Are Republicans who oppose this bill making a serious mistake, or are they holding the line and sticking to their principles on spending? And was AOC's speech as stupid to you as it was to me, or am I just biased? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's it for this video. I realize that in the last two videos I said no long announcements, but I still went on for a little while. So no announcements today. And I'm definitely not going to ask you to do all those things that other channels ask you to do, but I promised that I wouldn't ask you to do. So don't even think about me asking you to do those things that other channels ask all the time. Like right now is when I would do it, so I just don't want you to think about that stuff. Otherwise, as always, thank you so much for taking a couple minutes out of your day to watch my video. Never forget, Jesus loves you. See you guys.